Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, depending on which part of the world you're connecting from. Welcome to the Power in Practice webinar, where we'll be drawing lessons from Spotlight Initiative's approach to participatory monitoring, evaluation, and reporting, PMER, for grassroots accountability. This webinar is hosted by the Sexual Violence Research Initiative, SVRI, the Australian Volunteers Program, AVP, along with Spotlight Initiative. My name is Samu Ngwenya Chuma. I work with the Spotlight Initiative Secretariat, and today I have the privilege of being your moderator for the next hour. Before we get started, just a quick reminder of some of our housekeeping points. This webinar is being recorded, and both the recording and the slides will be made available after the webinar. Please note that the online audience is muted, but you are free during the duration of the webinar to add questions or comments to the chat or the Q&A box. We would actually love to know where you are joining us from, so please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Please note that the webinar is in English, but simultaneous interpretation is provided in Spanish, French, and international sign language. To access these channels, please click the globe icon on your Zoom toolbar and select your preferred language to hear the interpretation. The international sign language can actually be spotlighted at all times. Please also note that we will be showing 2 videos during the duration of the webinar. So we encourage you to enable the live captions by clicking Show Captions on your Zoom toolbar to view real-time subtitles during the meeting. Now, on our agenda today, we will start off by hearing opening remarks from the Australian Volunteers Program and the Spotlight Initiative Secretariat. They'll both help ground our discussion for today. This will be followed by a brief, engaging Slido activity designed to solicit reflections from you all. Next, we will move on to our Spotlight Initiative colleagues. They will guide us today through PMER principles, practical case studies, and available tools. Towards the end of the webinar, we will dedicate time for a question and answer session. And as we close, we will also share how you can continue engaging in this topic beyond the duration of the webinar. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome first Wendell, the Country Program Manager from the Australian Volunteers Program, who will then be followed by Natalie, the Technical and Monitoring and Evaluation Specialist at Spotlight Initiative Secretariat. Over to you, Wendell.
Thanks so much, Samu. It's such a lovely thing to be a part of this afternoon. So my role is to extend a very warm welcome to everyone joining us from across the world today. As Samu mentioned, my name is Wendell, and I'm part of the Australian Volunteers Program here in Johannesburg, in South Africa. And I'm so pleased to have the task to welcome you today on behalf of both the Australian Volunteers Program and the Sexual Violence Research Initiative, as we come together for this learning event in our second SVRI Forum virtual series. So last year, we were very fortunate to partner with the SVRI and to launch our first joint learning series, which had a strong focus on sharing the key insights from the SVRI Forum in 2024, which I was fortunate to be a part of. We designed this first series to offer colleagues who could not attend the Cape Town Forum an opportunity to engage with, to come and be a part of, to listen and to learn, and to share in the major themes that emerged from this forum. So the amazing participation in that series affirmed how valuable it is to keep these conversations alive and to keep them going between each of the physical forums, as well as to make the content more accessible to a wider community. So it was lovely that through this collaboration with the SVRI, we were able to launch another series. And both of these series have been grounded in the very simple but powerful idea that learning is strengthened when it is shared. And so that's why we're so fortunate to be able to bring together our networks, as well as our commitment to collective evidence building, to create spaces like this, spaces that connect local experience and expertise into global conversations and to help shape the field before we gather together in person. So this new series continues this commitment as we look ahead to the SVRI Forum 2026 in Bangkok. So you'll see the slide on the screen. I share some of the very important milestones towards this event. So it takes place from the 5th to the 9th of October. And it'll be hosted at Centara Grand Hotel and Convention Center in Bangkok. And we're really grateful as well for today's session in terms of coming together with Spotlight Initiative and partnering with us today and bringing their expertise into this discussion. So thank you so much to the Spotlight Initiative. So on the slide are some of the very important milestones that are coming up. So this is really exciting to have a look and to see the road towards Forum 2026. So you'll see the abstract submissions close on the 30th of January. So we're encouraging submissions from across regions, sectors, and disciplines. And we have 3 types of submissions going into this next forum. So there's research abstracts, so that's one type. There's also program or practice-based knowledge abstracts, which is really interesting to see how those pan out, as well as a new category called full panel abstracts. And this is the new category ideal for collaborative work that brings together diverse perspectives across institutions, regions, and sectors. So if you have something interesting you'd like to send through, make sure you do it before the 30th of January. There is also the early bird registration that ends on the 28th of February. And then you'll see on the slide, there's also a wide range of participation pathways that are available to all participants. So these could be pre-conference workshops, they could be exhibition spaces, a stand or a poster, as well as participant-driven events. So have a look at the SVR website. It's at the bottom of the slide, and go and have a look and see what's happening. We also do have another virtual launch on the 14th of January. So that will be a webinar, which we would welcome you to join us and hear a little bit more about the themes, the different ways that you can participate, as well as the different things to expect along the road to Bangkok in 2026. So go on and register and have a look and see all the exciting things that are coming along. We do also have another webinar coming up as part of these learning events. So this next one is on climate change. And if you follow our socials, you'll see it's scheduled for late January. So very exciting things coming up. And thank you to everyone for being with us here today. And I'll now hand back to the Spotlight colleagues for a few words before we begin the session. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Wendell. Thank you, Samu. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and evening. It's wonderful to see you. We're so happy to be able to meet today to share some tips and tools for participatory and inclusive approaches to programming that support shared decision-making, learning, and mutual accountability. In this moment of severe rights regression and attacks on human dignity, equality, and justice, we don't take being together for granted. Our sincere thanks to SVRI and to the Australian Volunteers Program for bringing us together, and to all of you for being here. Warmest thanks as well to our interpreters for supporting today's discussion. As mentioned, I'm Natalie Raber, and I'm from the Spotlight Initiative. I'm so happy to share a brief introduction alongside Wendell's to help ground our conversation. I will briefly introduce Spotlight Initiative and then speak to why participatory approaches matter. As you may know, Spotlight Initiative is the UN high impact initiative to end violence against women and girls. Launched in 2017, the initiative brings together UN agencies at country and regional level to end violence through a comprehensive, rights-based, whole of society approach that works across 6 interconnected areas. The initiative works to promote gender responsive laws and policies, strengthen institutions, and improve access to services. The initiative also works to promote gender equitable attitudes, behaviors, and norms, enhance and expand GBV data, and support the critical work of civil society, including particularly women's rights organizations and movements. And importantly, the initiative does this in partnership with government and, as mentioned, civil society, as well as others, including academia, trade unions, community leaders, the private sector, and faith-based institutions. From its inception, Spotlight Initiative has been committed to applying participatory approaches throughout its programming cycle, including in its monitoring, evaluation, and reporting activities. Why? Because we knew that this was the right way to work. Participatory approaches promote key human rights principles, including non-discrimination, equality, and inclusion. And because we knew that applying these approaches would allow us to do our work better. It would allow us to do more relevant, responsive, and sustainable work. So what is participatory monitoring, evaluation, and reporting, or PMER? Our panelists will walk us through this today, but we'd like to briefly define it here too. PMER is an approach. It's a rights-based approach to monitoring, evaluation, and reporting that centers the voices and perspectives of those we are meant to directly engage and support, women and girls in all their diversity, rights holders, and community members. Steeped in rich traditions of feminist and social justice leadership, organizing, and resistance, participatory approaches have been and continue to be used by organizations and advocates alike. Participatory approaches pay attention to power and value diverse perspectives. They help us ensure that when we ask, how are we doing as an initiative or organization? What's working and what's not? And how can we adapt to end violence more readily and fully? That we prioritize asking the individuals meant to most directly benefit from the initiative's work, and that we privilege their responses and take them forward in programming. Women and girls are not a monolith, and our communities are diverse. Without participatory approaches, we risk missing critical perspectives and reproducing harmful power dynamics, or designing interventions that don't meet diverse local needs. PMER strengthens our ability to adapt and remain responsive. It helps us build trust and strengthen ownership over time. And by doing this, by consistently valuing the perspectives of women and girls in all their diversity, including survivors, by listening and learning, we are better able to understand the underlying systems, structures, and beliefs that perpetuate violence across all of our societies. And in so doing, roll out interventions that more readily promote transformative change. Thank you again for being here and for everything you and your organizations have been and are doing to advance this work. It's critical to our collective efforts to end gender-based violence. We're so grateful once again to SVRI and to the Australian Volunteers Program and to all of you. I'm very much looking forward to today's discussion. Back over to you, Samu.
Thank you so much to Wendell and to Natalie for really grounding our webinar today and really highlighting the importance of our discussion. Next, we're going to go into our Slido activity. Please note there are 2 ways of joining. You can either scan the QR code that is on the screen right now, or you can go directly to slido.com and enter the Slido number. We're also going to drop some of these details in the chat as well. And if you're not comfortable using Slido, please feel free to actually also type your responses in the chat. So our question for today is, we really want to know from you all, what does true PMER look like? What does true participatory monitoring, evaluation, and reporting look like? Bear in mind, it can be a phrase, it can be a word, or anything you would like to share that captures that sentiment. We're going to give it a couple of minutes, and we'll be able to see a couple of responses coming in, and we'll also watch the chat, and then we'll take it from there. So we see there's already some 3 responses. We'll give it a couple of minutes to see if we're getting more. Yes. So we have justice, fair, co-creation, unbiased information, timely and constructive, inclusive, no preset indicators or outcomes. That's a really good one. Survivor-centered, co-design, co-creation. I see a lot of responses really referring to, a sense of co-creating and co-designing things, differing options for engagement, exactly. So not having one set approach, speed of trust, just, fair, accountability, exactly. A lot of accountability I see coming in. Equal, nimble and responsive programming, involving communities, yes. And please also feel free to drop responses in the chat as well. Thank you. We see reflexive practice in the chat. All right, these are really good. Multilingual, yes, absolutely. Collaborative, horizontal, so not top down. All right, okay. So I think we'll leave it at that. So I think it's really great to see how a lot of you identified the aspect of community, centering rights holders' voices, being community driven. We really see that a lot, and it's super important that is weaved in throughout the implementation of PMER. So thank you all for your engagement in this activity, and we hope you'll be able to see some of these elements that you've actually shared throughout the content of the webinar that will be presented today. We will now move on to the next segment that will focus on the learnings that are drawn from Spotlight Initiative. We will hear from our 4 colleagues as displayed on the slide, and we will also make their bios available in the chat. So to start us off, I'd like to hand over the floor to Brianna. Brianna, thank you.
Thank you, Samu. Thank you. Following that wonderful introduction and framing, I would like to jump straight into the core feminist principles we encourage programs to use when implementing PMER at Spotlight. And later we'll hear 2 brief examples from our programs to highlight what helps this approach work in practice. So in the work to end violence against women and girls and across other complex social change areas, traditional M&E often relies on external experts and donor-driven priorities. It can feel top-down or extractive. Feminist PMER offers a different approach. It helps ensure that what gets counted, valued, and reported reflects lived realities and the complex change processes that underpin efforts to end violence. At Spotlight, feminist PMER is grounded in core feminist and human rights principles. Power sharing means creating processes where diverse voices, particularly those groups historically excluded, can meaningfully influence decisions about monitoring, evaluation, and reporting. Accountability means being accountable first and foremost to women and girls, communities, and movements we serve, while also recognizing our mutual accountability to donors and their constituents. There's a real tension here, and PMER can help us navigate it. Reflexivity requires ongoing self-reflection about our own biases, assumptions, and positionality, and a critical awareness of power dynamics shaping participatory processes. Collective sense-making brings together diverse perspectives to deepen understanding, strengthen collaboration, and co-create knowledge that reflects people's lived experiences. Multiple ways of knowing recognize that quantitative data is one source of evidence, and that community knowledge, lived experience, and local practices provide equally valid insights into change. Together, these principles shape PMER at Spotlight and help ensure that learning, accountability, and decision-making are grounded in justice, equity, and lived experience. And with that, I'm very pleased to present a video from Grace to share an example from civil society engagement in Uganda.
Hello everyone, my name is Grace Naiga. I'm a social justice advocate in Uganda. I'm also a member of the Civil Society National Reference Group. The Civil Society Reference Group in Uganda is attuned to planning, monitoring, evaluation and reporting, focusing on civil society actors, but also the rights holders. And we've been doing that through different mission visits, monitoring visits, but also participatory visits, where we move out to different implementers, different implementing regions, different actors, and we are able to interact with the rights holders themselves. We've been able to meet with different women's groups, the girls groups that have been supported by the Spotlight Initiative, but also being able to participate in program implementation to inform our advisory role to the Spotlight Initiative leadership and the different agencies within the country that are implementing the Spotlight Initiative. One of the approaches that we've been using is to interact with the lived experiences. We have moved to communities. Here in Uganda, we've moved to communities like Northeast Karamoja, where we have met communities of the Pokot women and girls from the Karamoja region. And we've been able to get from their experiences to inform programming. Right now, we have just concluded our monitoring visits, and we've been able to gather the feedback at the Civil Society Reference Group that will inform programming, especially considering the current season where we are in elections. So in a way, we see that this approach enables programming to be shaped in such a way that it is true to the needs of the communities of women and girls within remote districts, because we are able to amplify their voices based on our experiences when we do the mission visits, and we are able to impact the programming in that regard. The lived experiences of women and girls in Karamoja is so powerful, and we believe that it can shape programming going forward, but also currently considering what's being implemented right now. And we believe that it's one of those approaches that needs to be used to inform future programming, to base it on lived stories, on lived experiences, on what the communities demand, what the communities need, amplifying their voices, especially using the civil society reference group approach, which we believe is strong for the Spotlight Initiative, because it informs the top-bottom leadership and decision-making, and it is quite powerful.
Wonderful. Now that we've heard from Grace what PMER looks like in practice through civil society engagement with Spotlight in Uganda, it's important to be clear about what PMER requires to work. These are not technical requirements. They are enabling conditions that create space for participation, power sharing, and honest engagement. So participatory approaches take time. They rely on relationship building, negotiation, and iterative learning. This requires adequate time, funding, and human capacity, and often means reorganizing or reallocating resources. Change is not linear, and making space for that is central to PMER's success. PMER also depends on strong relationships and a commitment to addressing power imbalances within programs. Trust allows people to speak openly, share critical feedback, and work through disagreements. This trust cannot be rushed and must be built and maintained over time. PMER requires a supportive culture of openness and transparency, including honesty about what is not working. Participatory processes inevitably involve negotiation about who participates, what gets monitored, how information is gathered, and how findings are used. PMER only matters when evidence leads to action. This means creating formal and informal spaces for dialogue, follow-up, and corrective action, and systems that ensure that teams respond to what emerges or explain why something is not taken forward. Accountability, is political. It reflects whose power is recognized and whose knowledge is valued. PMER helps surface and address the tension between accountability to donors and accountability to communities. When rights holders and movements are meaningfully included, programming shifts towards greater relevance, justice, and responsiveness. Finally, PMER requires openness to learning and flexibility as context shift and respect for different ways of knowing. Together, these conditions form the foundation of PMER and enable power shifting we aim to achieve in practice. With the prerequisites in place, we can turn to what implementing PMER looks like in practice. So first, identifying participants. This means intentionally engaging the right stakeholders from the start. It requires time, dedicated resources, power analysis, and transparency about who is involved and why. Getting this right early helps ensure diverse perspectives throughout the PMER process. Second, co-designing objectives. Here, stakeholders help shape goals and priorities, strengthening relevance and ownership. This step takes time, negotiation, and collaboration, and this point was something we saw in that Slido activity. Third, gathering information. This involves collecting data in systematic and inclusive ways. It is not only about tools or methods, but about ensuring that different voices and experiences are reflected in the evidence used. Fourth is analyzing together. Joint analysis supports shared learning and collective sense-making. This is where participation becomes influence, as programs interpret not just the data, but what it means. And finally, sharing and adapting. Findings are shared back with communities and partners, and programs adjust based on what they learn. This is what keeps PMER responsive and dynamic. At national and regional levels, these steps show up in very practical ways, including structured feedback processes. We see participatory monitoring visits, broader consultations with networks and grassroots groups, and the documentation of promising practices, impact stories, and lessons. These insights are then shared across Spotlight to strengthen learning. And now, to bring this example to life, we will turn to another video example from our former colleague, Timar Kidane.
I'll start with the more practical challenge, which is ensuring effective data collection. To give you an example, in our midterm assessment, we had 52 focus group discussions and multiple key informant interviews across 6 different districts of the country. So that meant that we had different teams collecting information from different groups in different districts. We had to work pretty hard to ensure that data collectors were asking the right questions in a survivor and human rights-centered way, that they were truly listening to their groups and encouraging active participation. Compiling the data was also not that easy because we had so many people to follow up with. The data collectors were several, and we had to follow up with them to get their reports. And the quality of reports varied considerably across the board as well. Another challenge we faced was managing community expectations. We needed to be extremely careful not to raise undue expectations. For instance, in many low-income countries, communities will often prioritize income-generating activities, which is understandable given the widespread poverty in the country. But there's a limit to how much we would be able to integrate these types of requests into the program. The last challenge we faced was collecting information and perspectives around women and girls facing intersecting multiple forms of discrimination. Even if we had a focus group discussion with only women with disabilities, the range of disabilities is so broad that there is no one solution. A woman who is both visually and hearing impaired does not have the same needs as a woman who has a mental disability, for instance. So, in hindsight, perhaps it would have been more appropriate to use a different format of data collection to be able to fully capture the spectrum of protection gaps. First challenge was probably the easiest to manage. We had orientation sessions for data collectors, and we went over the questions and the tools one by one, and we had detailed interview guides. Each question explained the rationale behind the question itself, i.e., what exactly did we want to know by asking this question? And we then created teams where there was at least one person from a program coordination team or one person with strong monitoring and evaluation background. And to facilitate the report back process, we provided reporting templates. Secondly, on expectations, we made sure that we had a script in each data collection tool that facilitators would be able to use to explain the process and what participants could expect. The tools included language that prompted data collectors to allow ample time for questions and to encourage participants to ask for clarification where needed. Our solution to the last challenge was to strengthen our work with grassroots actors. So to engage partners that have a particular expertise working with specific vulnerable populations. And we also had to be cognizant that there is never a one-size-fits-all solution, and that we could only do our best to address the most widespread protection gaps. Individual needs would be addressed separately through case management approaches.
So in service of time, I will put up this slide, but as our colleagues have mentioned, this webinar is recorded and will be shared. So we just wanted to share some examples with you. As my colleagues mentioned at the beginning, we haven't created this approach. We are contributing to a rich history. And so I would rather hand it over to Shama, give her extra time, and over to you, Shama.
Thank you so much, Brianna, and hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be here with you. I'll also try to be as brief as possible because I can go on and on about this co-design process that we went through as the Civil Society Global Reference Group of Spotlight. As a history for all of you, I'm just showing you what we went through with the process of the co-design principles. Just to let you know, we started as the Civil Society Global Reference Group in 2019, and 2023 was basically the end of our mandate as the Civil Society Global Reference Group. And what we thought would be interesting for us to do as the Civil Society Global Reference Group, actually not interesting, but we thought it was needed as much as possible, because when we started as a Civil Society Global Reference Group, in all honesty, Spotlight didn't necessarily involve a lot of civil society voices with the design of Spotlight. But we were in a process of transition. Spotlight was in a process of transition, and we thought that we wanted ahead of this and make sure that civil society voices are centered in the second iteration of Spotlight. Hence, this whole co-design process of what are some of the principles that needs to be incorporated into the programming of Spotlight. Throughout the whole time that we were a global reference group, we conducted monitoring and accountability processes. We have a monitoring toolkit as a global reference group on how civil society was engaged throughout Spotlight. We publish that every 2 years as civil society. That toolkit was created with the PMER consortium. They worked with us to create the toolkit, and that was also disseminated with the national and the regional reference groups, apart from the global reference group as well. From those national, regional, and global reference group monitoring toolkits, we collated them together to start the discussion paper that you're seeing on the slide right now. The slide, the discussion paper incorporated the top line items that we saw was highlighted in the monitoring reports of civil society reference groups. We then thought that it would be helpful for us to go through the process with other civil society reference groups. But then at the same time, civil society reference groups is not the only way that Spotlight engages with civil society. Civil society is also implementing. They're also implementing partners. They're also grantees within Spotlight. And those are some of our blind spots as the reference group. So we thought that it would be important for us to be able to engage with them as well. And so we included them in the process through the workshops that we did for the whole entire year. Basically, like every quarter, we had like one workshop. And then we launched the principles with the regional dialogue the regional learning dialogue event that UNTF did, and called for endorsements from civil society from there, and are now using this for accountability. One thing I do want to be completely honest with all of you, though, is I know that we use co-design and co-creation a lot, and on some of the times it has lost its power. When some people actually mean consultation, they say, co-creation or co-design. I think one thing that we do need to be mindful of as civil society and as people who are working within feminist spaces is we need to be mindful of ourselves. If we actually mean consultation, we say consultation. And if we mean co-design, we mean co-design. And we actually don't just say the right words, we actually do it the right way as well. Next slide, please. These are some of the key components that we had for our co-design process that I think it would be important to highlight for all of you. The first one is that it was civil society led, but we were supported by the Secretariat. As civil society, we don't have all the money in the world, but the Secretariat has. And so we collaborated with the Secretariat for them to be able to support us. And that support was through procurement of interpretation. They gave us their Zoom account. They gave us help in terms of inviting the regional, in terms of inviting the implementing partners and the grantees. As I said, that was our blind spot, and it was national program coordinators and countries that were able to engage with the implementing partners and the grantees, and not us. So we invited the national and the regional reference groups, and they helped us invite the grantees and the implementing partners as well. It was an independent process. And when I say an independent process, yes, the Secretariat supported procurement. They gave us the resources to be able to do all of the workshops, but we had the reins in terms of decision making. What is to be included, what is not to be included in the document, and what we needed from the Secretariat. We asked the UN how they can step back and let us take the lead. And they gladly took that challenge on. And we took the challenge of having the responsibility of holding each other accountable as well. So we needed to make sure that, yes, now we have the power, we need to hold ourselves accountable as well. I mean, to be ready to be held accountable. The next one is, it's clearly intended for collective advocacy and institutional accountability. We are now using this as accountability tool towards the Secretariat. So you can see that circle on your right. Those are the principles. And under that are key actions and key examples of how they can be incorporated into programming. If you want, I can share with you the full document. It's like 30 pages of actions. From these principles, we also created series of two main documents out of this. The first one is a checklist for UN country teams on how they can incorporate this into their program documents, that we also shared with national reference groups who are doing legacy projects of Spotlight right now, so that they can hold their UN country teams accountable as well. And right now what we're doing is we are aligning the civil society co-design principles into the monitoring toolkit that we first used for the design of the principles, so that it's like it feeds into what we know from, and then it can grow from there as well. I hope I'm making sense. But that's how we're trying to make sure that it feeds and informs everything, and it aligns with all of the knowledge that we have. And last point, of course, is the priority of lived experiences. Again, this is highlighted through first the decision to make human rights number one. We thought that we wanted funding mechanisms to be number one, honestly, because you're like, oh, we need money, civil society needs money. But then we thought, okay, yes, we may have the money, but if we don't have the necessary foundations of our humanity, it's not going to be as powerful. So we thought number one should be human rights. And then lastly, as a way of making sure that humans are at the center of this is the reason why it took us a year, and it was distributed across months, because not everyone would have the time to be able to do it if we did it every week. Civil society organizations have day jobs, and we can't just take them away from their day jobs just because we wanted to do this co-design process. So we did this across every 4 months to make sure that people had the time to prepare, people had the time to participate, and people had the time to like emotionally and mentally prepare for it when the consultations come within the co-design process, and that we have everybody that we wanted in the room, especially those that have the expertise in each of the areas that are in the circle that you see here. I end it here and pass it over back to Samu. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Many thanks to all our speakers for sharing. You've really taken us through some great insights from key steps on how to implement PMER, particularly the need to be open to learning and flexibility. I think even with Shama right now, understanding what meaningful co-creation and co-design actually looks like and not just saying that, as well as also looking at addressing challenges that you might experience when implementing PMA. So thank you all, and we really appreciate those insights. At this point in time, we would like to open up for the question and answer session to hear from you all if you have any questions or reflections based on what you've heard. Please feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A box, or feel free to raise your hand, and if we can get to you, we will be able to unmute. So thank you. I'll give it a minute, and I'll be watching the Q&A box as well. Or even if you just have a reflection, yes, please feel free. Maybe you've implemented PMA, you've faced challenges. Please feel free to come in. I see Julius or Tim going to try and unmute you right now. And please feel free to come in, Julius.
Many thanks. Just confirm you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Great, and thank you so much to all the colleagues that have submitted quite eloquently. Good to see you, Natalie, and all the colleagues up there. I think mine is a reflection, but also to appreciate the work you're doing, especially in the aspect of rolling out PMER. And this is given the fact that on the side of the spotlight, let's say for the Africa Spotlight regional program, the one which we implemented and ended in December 2023. And now we have a successor program that will be kicking off officially by January 2026. There is quite a lot we believe we should be in position to leverage with the new tool and with this new approach that you're speaking about. And this is given the fact that the new successor program of Spotlight has a lot of engagement with the RECs. These are the regional economic communities. So we'll be working quite a lot with the Africa Union, with the East African community, with the ECOWAS, with SADC, and quite a number across the continent. This is in particular for Africa, on addressing the issues of GBV and harmful practices. So I think this is very critical, especially given the fact that there's been lots of frameworks that have been developed at REC level. If I speak in particular, the African Union currently right now, they are at the process of ratifying the AU Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls. So these are some of the things we believe we could be in position to leverage on the strength of this tool, and seeing how we do this kind of synergy between the regional program and the country program, of course, with the civil society at the front in terms of helping us to champion. Because whatever is being developed in terms of laws, frameworks, at regional level, at REC level, where we do have member states sitting, all has to be translated, and the actual implementation has to kick in at the country level. So I think this will be very, very important to make sure that we all move in tandem. Don't leave us behind at the regional level. Let's move together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julius. Thank you for those reflections. Really important in highlighting just how at the regional level as well, we need to make considerations on how we are implementing PMER. Thank you. So we are still open for any questions. I see there's a question in the chat, so I will read it out loud. It says, has this tool and PMER approach been in use already? When was it launched for use, and what shifts do you see in applying this new approach? So not sure, maybe if I can hand this over to Natalie, just in terms of speaking about how we've implemented PMER across Spotlight Initiative throughout the different iterations, and then what shifts maybe have we seen in terms of using regular M&E frameworks versus using PMER frameworks. So maybe over to you, Natalie, if you could help us with that one. Over.
Yes, very, very happy to. And others, please jump in as well, of course. Thank you so much. Thank you for the question. So when Spotlight Initiative launched in 2017, the intention was always to center participatory and consultative inclusive approaches in programming. But as we heard earlier from Shama as well, there was at times a disconnect between the stated ambition of the initiative and how we were working in practice. So formally and officially, we've been implementing participatory approaches since 2017 and 2018 going forward. But along the way, we've developed concrete tools to support programs, as well as at the country and regional level, as well as us at the global level, to truly implement participatory approaches in practice. So we have guidance notes, we have examples of the approach being implemented in diverse contexts that we've shared across the initiative. We've gathered in several knowledge exchanges. These were ways that we could translate our commitment discursively to participatory approaches into practice and supporting programs to do so. More recently, and I think maybe we heard this as well in the Slido exercise. I think it was a point on sort of no preset indicators, no preset outcomes. So under Spotlight Initiative 1.0, the first phase of the initiative, which ran from the launch in 2017 to the end of 2023, we're now in the second phase. We had a preset global results framework that all programs, country and regional programs, were meant to select from. There were over 70 indicators, so there was a diversity of indicators, but programs felt, and in large part, this was because they weren't involved at the onset of developing the results framework, that it was a top-down approach, and that the indicators, while they did capture myriad changes, they weren't as responsive to the diverse contexts that we work, including at the regional level, as they could be. So last year, and over the past year and a half nearly, we launched a participatory at global level consultation. Many of you have participated in this along the way, to revise Spotlight Initiative's results framework, initiative-wide results framework, with perspectives from programs, from civil society, from other international development partners, feminist and women's rights organizations at the forefront of ending violence in their communities. We went through an intensive participatory process and have now landed at an initiative-wide framework that is truly iteratively developed and consulted. Programs have a wider range of indicators to select from. In previous iterations, these indicators were mandatory. They are not now. The advice is to only select indicators that are relevant and capture meaningful change in context. And so that's just another example of how we're trying to adapt and take forward this way of working more fully and readily. I hope that helps answer the question, but others, please come in. Thanks, Samu. Thank you for the question.
No, thank you, Natalie, for responding to that. And thank you to the attendee who also posted that question. So just looking in the chat to see if there's any additional questions coming in. So I see Jessica. Jessica says, thank you so much. I was wondering whether all your tools and guidance are available online, and also whether you are thinking of providing training to participants that are outside the Spotlight Initiative. So maybe I can hand that over to Brianna, who did have a slide on this topic as well. And then I think we also can provide resources at the end of the webinar, or we'll share a package following the webinar. Also, I see Natalie and Aisa have actually dropped links already. So please feel free to access those, Gabrielle. Brianna, did you have anything else you wanted to add based on the slide?
Sure. Just to say thank you to Jessica and Gabrielle for the questions. And I would just mention the resources shared by Natalie and Aisa. To your question, Jessica, about providing training to participants outside of Spotlight, it's not something we are currently doing. However, Samuel, I don't know if this is the moment to transition to the closing, because we do have an opportunity to share lessons and learning. We want to be able to continue this conversation, but just to say that as we had mentioned throughout the presentation, PMER is not a one-size-fits-all. We decentralize to our programs, to the country and regional level. So it's really for them to select the approaches that best suit their program, best suit the stage of implementation. So we provide some guidance. We're happy to provide feedback, but it's really our programs who provide the training and engage in these different processes at the program level. So that might be a long answer to say no at the moment, but I might pass over to Samu if you think that now you want to take any last questions and maybe move to the closing.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe let's see if we have any last questions, and if not, we can move to the closing, which will also include kind of a call of action and also share a bit about how you can continue to be engaged in this topic. So maybe, okay, I see there are no additional questions. So if it is okay with you all, we will transition to the closing. So it really is our hope that you have all found the session today to be helpful, and that you'll be able to kind of take these learnings back to your work, or even be able to scale them up if you are already doing this. And I think something that is really clear from today's webinar is that in our work, when implementing the PMER approach, we really need to be centering the voices of women and girls in all their diversity, or centering the rights holders that we serve. Now, if you are interested in continuing with this discussion or this conversation, we have actually launched an online discussion on Shine. For some of you who do not know Shine, Shine is actually an online hub for global knowledge exchange on ending violence against women and girls. Shine was developed by the UN Trust Fund to End Violence Against Women and Girls in collaboration with Spotlight Initiative. And so to join the discussion, you can actually scan the QR code, and then we will also make the link available in the chat as well. And also just a quick reminder, as Wendell had mentioned at the beginning, the call for abstracts is still open and will close on the 31st of January. So we encourage you all, if you're interested, to please submit before that deadline. Last but not least, all the presentations and the recording of this webinar will be made available to you all, and will also be available on the SVRI website. So you can access this at any time. If there was a slide that you found interesting and you want to refer back to it, rest assured you'll be able to access them. So thank you once again to all our speakers, to our interpreters. And thank you all for joining us today, and we wish you a restful end of the year. Thank you so much, colleagues.
Thank you so much.